have a very long life story, so the fastest life story is just to show you my Apple badge. I worked there. That's who I am. It's a very interesting story of how I got there. I come from Hawaii, as you can tell by the costume of my people. I live here in Amsterdam, as you can tell by my color choices. But this is not the story about all of that. This is really the story about after I left Apple and what I've done since and what I've learned and what's important. I think the most important thing that you need to know about me is not even that I worked at Apple. The most important thing that you need to know about me is that I started out just like most of you, which is to say I love technology. I have this very positive view of the future, and I believe that by working in technology and making cool things, we can bring the future faster. I think that's the motivation that most of us have. So, as we get into this, it's important that you bear in mind, I started at the same place where you are. After I left Apple, I started traveling the world. I took a year, did nothing but conferences, spoke to people making apps, spoke to people making all kinds of things, a surprising array of people all over the world, and after I moved here to Amsterdam, that didn't stop. One of the things I love about Amsterdam is it's so easy to travel all over the world from here, and so I've just spent the last 6 or 7 years just traveling and meeting people and having this same conversation over and over again where the person says, this is what we're working on, and I say, okay, that's good, but that's going to fail, so you need to do this this other way. And they say, oh my God, that's so true. And then they do what they were going to do in the first place, and then they fail. Because they're not paying attention to the most important thing. Now, what is the most important thing? It would be nice if I could just stand up and say, oh, the most important thing is air. Okay, we can just go home. No. The most important thing, it depends. It's more of a concept than a specific thing, right? The most important thing is the thing that if you are not working on the most important thing, then you are going to fail, because if the most important thing fails, then everything fails, because by definition, it's the most important thing. Let me give you a very easy example. There are so many ways to die. So many ways to die, and here's a list of most of them. The funny thing about this list is I have worried about every single thing on this list. Every time I take a flight, which is frequently, I'm afraid that something's going to happen to the flight. Every time I get in a car, I'm afraid that we're going to crash. Every time I hear firecrackers, I'm afraid that it's gunfire and I'm going to get shot. But the thing is, even though we can put them all on a list like this, and even though we can worry about them in equal amounts, they're not all equally likely. And if you actually look at a chart, this chart correlates the size of a circle, the relative size of a circle, to the relative risk of something killing you. So what you can see is that your chance of dying of heart disease and cancer, combined, it's about 1 in 4. That's most of it, right? That's almost certainly what is going to kill you. Stroke, 1 in 24, next biggest bubble. Respiratory disease is actually the same size as stroke. Here's what it comes down to. You can worry about all these different ways to die, but if you're a smoker, you're going to die from smoking. Definitely. Definitely. And I say this because, one, I used to smoke. I totally get it. I understand that smoking is awesome, but it's also super, super bad for you. And it's super, super bad for you because it causes cancer, heart disease, stroke, and there's lots of ways to get cancer, but as you can see from the cancer chart, it's mostly smoking, right? And this is important because I have this conversation with people where they say, I stopped eating bananas because I heard that they're radioactive, and whenever I go to the airport, I have to opt out because I don't want that radiation, and I'm really worried about Fukushima because of the radiation. I don't eat, broccoli anymore because I heard it's getting radiation from Fukushima. I'm so stressed out about radiation, I'm going to go smoke a cigarette. If you smoke, your lungs are the most radioactive thing in this room, by far. The inside of your lungs are the most radioactive thing you'll probably ever experience in your life. That's just how it is. So if you're worried about your health, then quitting smoking is the most important thing. And you can stop eating red meat, you can stop riding motorcycles, you can stop playing with fireworks. It's not going to make a single difference. If you smoke, that's what's going to kill you, so get used to it. That's the most important thing. Now, when it comes to something like business, it's different. The most important thing, most people think it's VC, right? Venture capital, that's the most important thing. When I travel around the world, that's what everybody always says. You know, here in Amsterdam, we don't have good VC funding, and it's really what holds us back. I was in Milan giving this talk, and people in Milan, same thing. Yeah, I went to Athens. They said, yo, things are bad here, but you know what really holds us back? Lack of venture capital. It's always venture capital. But here's the thing about this. It's never venture capital. In all my travels, I've met thousands of people, I've heard thousands of business ideas, I've seen thousands of prototypes. Not a single one of them was being held back by a lack of venture capital. And I know this, I know this. Let me tell you a story. So when I came to Amsterdam, it was about six years ago, right? And I started asking people, what sucks about this place? Because I know why this place is great, but what sucks about this place? And everybody said, well, there's two problems. One, I am the only person here who cares about technology. And two, there's no VC funding. And so I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. Meet me at Cafe Box on Wednesday at 7 o'clock. And then 12 people came and saw that they were not the only people who cared about technology. And then 20 people came and saw that they were not the only people who cared about technology. And then 100 people came, and then it became a whole movement, and then we became this Stichting Amsterdam, at one time, holding more meetups in the city than all other meetups combined. Because it's important that people get together. It's important that people see that they're not alone, that they're not the only ones. As for the VC, well, we started a VC fund. Met a bunch of VCs, started a fund, got together and said, everybody who's being held back by VC, come give us your pitch, and if we find anything we like, we'll fund it. And there's so much VC in the city, we were able to fund every single worthy project, which is to say that we funded 0 projects. VC is not your problem. The problem is that people fundamentally think about business the wrong way. The reason why your business is not successful, the reason why your product is going to fail, the reason why you as a person will be a failure for your entire life has nothing to do with VC and everything to do with the fact that you're just thinking about business the wrong way. For example, when I hear a pitch, 9 times out of 10, the first filter, here's what the pitch is. I have a great idea. You've already made a mistake. I have a great idea. Now, I'm not a technical person myself, so I need a technical co-founder to implement the idea, because it's a software idea. Second mistake. And then I need a VC to pay me and the software person. And it's always like, I get what you're getting out of it. I don't understand why anybody else would want to work with you. Whenever somebody tells me, we're changing the world, isn't this the most important thing, changing the world? Whenever somebody tells me we're changing the world, I can't help it, my eyes just start to roll. Like, immediately, we're changing the world, and it's just eye roll, and I feel terrible. I feel bad. I'm not trying to be a jerk, you understand. I'm trying to help. But my eyes, I can't help it, my eyes roll. Because I know, it's like a reflex. When somebody starts their pitch with, we're changing the world, the next thing they say is always going to be stupid. It's always going to be stupid. It's always like, we're changing the world by making it easier for people to interact with their favorite brands. I guess that's changing the world. Using the toilet is changing the world. Eating lunch is changing the world. Breathing air is changing the world. I mean, it's easy to change the world. It's not enough. It's not enough. But we're changing the world with software. You don't understand. We have the best idea for software. Terrible, terrible news about that. Nobody wants software. People don't want more software. If your whole proposition to people is, hey, you know all that stuff you have to worry about all day long? Well, here's one more thing for you to worry about. Here's one more piece of shit, piece of software with no documentation that you're not going to be able to figure out, that everyone's going to make you feel stupid about not know having to use, that everybody says is easy. Nobody wants more software. Nobody likes software. We like software. Nobody else likes software. You see the problem. No, this is not how this works. It would be nice. It would be great. It would be great if you could just think of an idea for a cool piece of software, and then you could just make it, and then you could just put it out there, and people would just buy it. Hell, not just software, all products, right? Here's an idea, make it, put it out there. Here's an idea, make it, put it out there. That's how you fail. It would be great. It would be amazing if you could just come up with ideas, and then people would buy them, and that would make you money. But it's just not how the world actually works. Right? It would be nice if you could do anything you want and say anything you want to anybody. It would be nice if you didn't have to wear pants on stage, but you do. Right? In the real world, you can't just come up with ideas and make money that way. Obviously, there are exceptions. There are always exceptions. But there's a reason why they're called exceptions, because they're exceptional. You are not exceptional. How could you be? Look at all of you. What you need is a value proposition. When you're talking about business, the most important thing is this. Something somewhere is an enormous pain in the ass. Something somewhere is costing people a lot of time and a lot of money. And if you can make something that will cost them less time and take up less of their money, people are going to buy that. It's a no-brainer. Here's a process. The process is expensive. Here's a tool. It makes the process cheaper. As long as the cost is less than the savings, it's a no-brainer. That's what we call a value proposition. Look at the software that makes money. It's always the most boring things, right? It's always like accounting software, right? Because accounting, it just takes up a lot of time, and we're not accountants, so we have to pay an accountant, and accountants are expensive. And so accounting software, it's the perfect thing. You spend this much, now you spend this much. I pocket a little bit of the difference, and everybody's happy. The value proposition. It's why automation is putting everybody out of work, because the only software that makes money is software that puts people out of work. Because when you say that you're making a process more efficient, what you're saying is you're putting somebody out of work. When you're saying that I'm saving you money on your taxes, what I'm saying is you're putting tax accountants out of work. When I save money, you don't make money. You understand? That's how we destroy everything and make money in the process. Software, love it. Most people's good ideas, and this is the thing, most people have good ideas. Most people's good ideas are not ideas for software. They're ideas for businesses, right? And this is the difference. Remember what I just said? You find something, it's a big pain in the ass, you make it more efficient. The thing has to exist, right? If the thing doesn't exist, and you have an idea for something that doesn't exist, you have to build the thing first, and then you can make it more efficient. But if the thing doesn't exist, you don't have a software idea, you have a business idea. But people want software to be magic fairy dust that skips the business building step, right? Here's the one that really sticks in my head, because it's such a good idea. This person said, there's so much bad information, there's so much fake news, everybody's worried about the wrong stuff. I think that what we need is a piece of software that whenever somebody's confused on the internet, it says, hey, don't be confused. Here's a convenient fact sheet that has everything that you need to know. I said, wow, that's a really good idea. But it's not a software idea. You don't need a technical co-founder and a VC to pay you both. Here's what you can do. You can pick something that you're passionate about, you can make up a fact sheet, and then you can go online and you can share your fact sheet with people. And then if that works and you get good at that, then you can make other fact sheets for other things, and you can share those with people. And then if it becomes so successful, you can hire other people to help share your fact sheets and other people to help create your fact sheets, and eventually you have a staff with a business and a workflow. And then maybe we can start talking about software to make that business more efficient. Because software does not replace building a business. Software accelerates existing workflows. That's all it does. That's the power of software. Yes, you can make an app that's just something that you've just come up with whole cloth out of your head, But it's very unlikely that people are going to want to buy that, believe me. Software accelerates workflows. That's where the money in software is. Now, that might sound very depressing. It might sound very boring. But actually, it's incredibly powerful. It's incredibly powerful, but it's incredibly powerful in an indirect way that you have to understand to really take advantage of, right? This is the metaphor that I like to use. You know how a cell works, right? Like, we're all made of cells, right? So a cell is just a big bag of chemicals. And all of these chemicals are having like reactions with each other, basically at random. And inside the cell, you have this stuff called DNA. And the DNA encodes for amino acids to be turned into proteins. The proteins are folded into enzymes. The enzymes act as catalysts. A catalyst does not change the reactions that are happening. A catalyst simply accelerates a reaction. So a given cell, if the DNA encodes this way or that way, will create this enzyme or this enzyme, which will accelerate this reaction or this reaction, and that determines what the cell does and how the cell behaves. It determines if it's going to be a muscle cell or a brain cell or some particularly dumb cell. And you might say, what is a particularly dumb cell? I would argue that algae is a particularly dumb cell. And when I say that it's dumb, what I mean is this. Here's how algae works. You have a cell of algae. That cell of algae grows, and then it becomes 2 cells of algae. Those 2 cells of algae grow, and then they become 4 cells of algae, and then they continue to double and double and double until eventually the algae runs out of resources and then dies. That's not too smart. We don't want to be like that. Now, here's the important thing to understand about software accelerating workflows. Workflows are how humanity impacts this planet. This planet is a cell, and we, as software people, we make the enzymes. That's the wrong button. I'm shooting lasers in people's eyes. We make the enzymes. It's incredibly powerful. It's indirect. It takes a certain kind of imagination. But here's how you affect the world. It's not by having some amazing idea that says, oh, here's the idea, and then you go out and build it. It's by going out and finding somebody who sucks at technology, some big corporation somewhere, and helping them with technology. Now, we do this all the time. Usually, it's a company like Shell. And when we do that, we accelerate the dumb cell. Sometimes we help a company that actually does good in the world, and when we do that, we accelerate in the smart direction. Now, this is very important. This doubling is very important because it's not just a thing that algae does. It's a thing that we as a human population do as well, right? This power of doubling. And doubling is very powerful, right? I mean, we know this. We all speak in binary, right? You all know the binary powers of 2 from 1 to 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 10, 24, 20, 48, 40, 96. I don't know them above that. I think that's the 12th power of 2. The numbers very, very quickly get out of hand. That's the power of doubling. The numbers very quickly get out of hand. When you plot that, that looks like this. That's a geometric curve. That's a power curve. It's a hockey stick. That's what VCs get very excited by. They get excited by hockey stick. They get excited by that kind of compound growth where growth leads to growth, which causes bigger growth, doubling and doubling and doubling and doubling. But the problem with something like this is that what tends to happen is that you run out of resources and then you collapse. And so what you have to be able to do then is you have to be able to stabilize, right? Algae cells are stupid. Human cells are not. Human cells are smart because they double and double and double, but eventually they stop doubling, and then you just sort of reach a good size, which is the size you are, and then you stop, right? And then they stop doubling unless they're cancer cells. And it's possible, right? You got to kind of pull back. You got to kind of level out. Like, that's what you want. Otherwise, you get the collapse. So, what is this graph? Fun made-up graph. This graph is actually from the World 3 model published by the Club of Rome in 1972. Which is to say, this is a model of the human population from 1900 until our near extinction in 2200. And these numbers are not theoretical. These numbers are real. Now you might say, well, it's a model. Of course, it's theoretical. But the model was published in 1972, which means the model is 45 years old, which means that we have data to back up the model. And the data tells us that the model is accurate. And that blue line is where we were heading in 1972. And the green line is what would have happened if we had taken 20 years to have a 4% annual year-over-year reduction in our reliance on fossil fuels. And this red line is the line that we're actually on now. Now, how did we get to this red line, and what does it mean? We got to the red line because you can pull back on using fossil fuels and whatnots. You can. But then you could also do the opposite of that. You could also double down. You could also say that technology will save us. There's way more oil than we think there is. We'll always be better at extracting resources. We'll never run out of resources. And the truth of the matter is we will run out of resources, but we'll kill ourselves from pollution first, and that's what that red line shows. What I think is interesting about this is that when you have double the resources, it doesn't double the amount of time you have. It only buys you a couple of decades. It delays the collapse, and then it makes the collapse happen that much faster. I think this is really interesting because, again, this model was published in 1972. 45 years people have been looking at this thing. It makes me wonder. It makes me wonder if somebody somewhere didn't say, you know, if we don't. We need to do this. We need to pull back, or else we're going to crash. And somebody else said, actually, you know what? I think I would rather everybody die very quickly. I think that this is happening on purpose. And I think that this is happening on purpose because when I look out at what all the rich and powerful people are doing, they're building giant yachts and preparing for the apocalypse. I think this is happening on purpose because when I look at the movies that come out, which are produced by the media companies, which are owned by the very rich and powerful, they promote ideas like The Purge and zombie movies, and this idea of, you know, eventually you're going to be surrounded by a bunch of people you're going to have to murder. Better get used to that idea. I think that this is happening on purpose, but it doesn't really matter what I think is because it's happening. Here's my scientific reference. This is from a paper called Human Nature Interaction and World Modeling with Modelica. Very, very technical topic, a lot of fun for computer nerds. If you're not so much into reading scientific papers, I gave a presentation on this a couple of years ago, which is also available online. So it's a nice 40-minute video where I go through the paper, go through the math step by step, do the algebra with emoji so that I can keep, I'm very bad at math, so it helps me keep track of everything. Okay, so I'm not really here to talk about the world model. That's definitely a thing that you should know about. I just want to bring it up. It's something you should look into. It's what made me the person I am today, learning about what we know. But it brings me to the topic of the most important thing, which they thought was a typo in my description. The most important thing, the name of this talk is from a quote from Steve Jobs. Many, many years ago, he gave an interview. If you Google the most important thing, Steve Jobs, you'll probably find this interview. And he made a statement where he said that the most important thing, he said that when you're born, you're told that life is just there for you to live. And the key to life is just to, you know, go to school, don't get into too much trouble, get married, have some kids, save some money, go on vacation once in a while. It's a very limited kind of life. Steve said that what you have to understand is that everything around us was built by people who are no smarter than we are, and we have the ability to change it. He said that if you can put your hands on reality, if you can push on one side and see how it pops out on the other side, if you can understand the influence that you can have on reality, then you can change it, and you'll want to change it because it's kind of messed up in a lot of ways. It is kind of messed up in a lot of ways. Here's one of them. The Arctic sea ice, also the Antarctic sea ice, both of these sea ice levels are declining, as you know, very steadily. But they have stopped declining steadily, and they have started declining at an accelerating rate. The weather is starting to turn on us, right? And the way that this manifests itself, it's not that the water gets slightly higher and slightly higher. It does, but that's not the thing that you notice. What you notice is that storms become stronger. What you notice is that the government revises its flood control numbers so that certain areas can be allowed to flood a little bit more because maybe we can't keep up with the ocean so much as we thought we could. It manifests itself in crazy thunderstorms in Australia that cause hundreds of asthma attacks, and people die because the ambulance can't respond to 100 people at the same time. It manifests itself in flooding in Colorado. When I was there, it started flooding, and they'd never flooded before, and they didn't know what to do. A great opportunity for some Dutch startups in water control all around the world because everywhere is flooding. It manifests itself. I was in Seattle a few years ago, and the power went out for 10 days because all of the power lines got ice on them, and all of the power lines collapsed at the same time, and the infrastructure is not built to put up every power line at the same time. And so some people were without power for 10 days. William Gibson said that the future's already here, it's just not evenly distributed, and we like to think that that means the good future, and that we get the good stuff first. But it also means the bad future, and we get the bad stuff last. We're protected from it by our wealth and by our militaristic governments. And so we don't notice so much that things are happening. But you go to places like Southeast Asia, and you see sort of how things actually are. I was in Taipei 4 years ago at the top of Taipei 101, and very excited about this because I'm a huge engineering nerd, and Taipei 101 used to be the world's tallest building. 101 stories. 101-story building is always trying to be blown over. And so they have a 67-ton ball of steel at the top of that building that floats. And so when the building blows, the steel ball just moves around and it just keeps the building still. It's super cool. Instead of hiding it in the building, there's like a museum around it. It's amazing. I was there again, and in the 4 years, that thing had moved more than it had ever moved before, 3 times. So it's like record broken, record broken, record broken. The last time it had moved a meter, right? In 4 years, right? A nation constantly pelted by typhoons that is literally built to withstand typhoons is being destroyed by typhoons. That's how it manifests itself. So what do we do? What do we do with this information? What do we do with the fact that the world is being destroyed, and we know the world is being destroyed, and everywhere we go, we're constantly being confronted with news that the world is being destroyed, the weather is destroying things, governments are only getting stupid, the United States has gone insane, Britain, who knows what the fuck they're doing, everything's exploding, what do we do? I think it depends. It depends on who you are, it depends on how you feel about this. I get all kinds of reactions, you know? Some people they don't believe this stuff at all. They believe that there's no sense in worrying about this stuff. They believe that technology will save us ultimately in the end. And that's fine. If you believe that Elon Musk is going to save us all, then you should go work for Elon Musk. That's all, period. That's your excuse. There's what you do. Go work for Elon. They have an office right here in Amsterdam, and not just sales jobs. They have engineering jobs right here in Amsterdam. I know, I almost applied for one. Yeah. You don't like Elon Musk? Go work for somebody else who's saving the world. If you think that technology will save us, go find a technologist who's saving us and go work for them. That's all. Don't use it as an excuse. For everybody else, what do we do? You need to brace yourselves. That's why I'm here. That's why I woke up early this morning and put off doing what I should be doing instead to come here and talk to all of you. Because I've left the mothership, I have looked at the world, and what I have discovered is the system is falling apart, we're not going to stop it, and we need to brace ourselves. We've all learned how to survive a crash. We've all been on an airplane, they teach you how to survive a crash. Brace, brace, brace. Now there's a rumor that the brace position is only invented so that you put your head against the seat in front of you and then you snap your neck and you die very quickly so that they don't have to pay medical costs. That's actually not true. I looked that up. I was like, is that true? It's not true. There have been multiple crashes where you have some people braced and some people not braced, and the ones who braced did better than the ones who didn't brace. There was one crash where literally one person braced. Everybody died except for that one person. It's very easy. You all understand the physics well enough. If you are going at a high rate of speed and then you stop very suddenly, you're going to fly forward, you're going to slam your head into the seat in front of you, that impact is going to kill you. But if you put your head in the low energy state, then when you stop, it just kind of smushes your face into the seat like that, and you'll be much better off. So the secret is, if you're going to be transitioning very rapidly to a low energy state, you want to transition yourself to the low energy state as much as possible so that you are impacted the least amount possible. What does that mean? Again, it depends. I live here in the center of the city of Amsterdam. So I cannot, for example, put solar cells on my house. What I can do is ask people who do have houses why they don't have solar cells on their houses, and they always say because we don't have enough sun, and I always say Germany has all the solar cells and they have as little sun as we do. I know that the Germans are not better than us, so what's our problem? What's our excuse? How come when I stand on my balcony and I look out, I see a smokestack belching coal smoke instead of solar cells as far as the eye can see? It's not like they're expensive anymore. I can't believe how cheap solar cells are now. So if you can't put them on yourself, then you have to develop the political will, right? I went to the Dutch Resistance Museum, the Versets Museum right here in the city, because this city has gone through things before. I needed to know, can the Netherlands sustain itself in terms of food? And the answer is yes. In the year before World War II, we killed all the cows, we killed all the chickens, we raised nothing but vegetables, and we managed to feed ourselves as a country all the way until the hunger winter. And that wasn't fair. That was a cheat. That wasn't on us. We can grow our own food. We can support ourselves. We can do this. I've started gardening. I've killed every plant I've ever tried to raise, but I started gardening. I don't have a garden. I have a balcony. I have an Albert Heijn bag with Albert Heijn soil and Albert Heijn moestuintjes, and I'm learning how to grow my own food, right? Because right now, learning how to grow your own food is easy, right? Tram 1, Town Centrum Osdorp, everything you need, right? When money has no value, learning to grow your own food is going to be very, very difficult, right? I've started eating less beef. I don't care that much. Usually if they say beef or chicken, I don't care. Now I say chicken, because I know that beef is very, very destructive. When I go to the store, when I go to Albert Heijn, I always look to see if it says palm oil, right? Oli, comma, palm. And if it does, I know a rainforest was destroyed to make this product. Sometimes I still buy it, but I always know. Somewhere in Indonesia, a rainforest was destroyed to make this product. I open my eyes. I'm not perfect. I don't have all the answers, but I try to keep my eyes open. Put on your own mask before assisting others. I'm learning to grow my own food. I'm thinking about where my water comes from. I'm thinking about where my power comes from. I'm thinking about where my waste goes. I'm thinking about where my clothes come from. I'm thinking about all of these things, right? Learning first aid. Not because I think that everything's going to collapse tomorrow, but because I know that the collapse happens slowly. I know that the power might go out and it might not come on for 10 days because I've already experienced that. I know that people are not prepared for the power to not come on for 10 days. I don't keep 10 days of food in the house, but I need to start. I need to be aware of how many days I can survive when the power is out. Every day I remind myself, because it's hard. This is real. This is happening. The planet is actually being destroyed, and we are all actually going to be affected by this. We're all actually going to be killed. Our children, our grandchildren, they're all actually going to die. We're not going to be in the 1%. We're going to build the robots so that they don't need us anymore, but then we're going to die. It's hard to remember that. It's hard to take that seriously. Every morning I remind myself. This morning I'm reminding you. That's all I have. I'll take any questions other than that. I'll see you on Meetup. Lunch on Wednesday, drinks on Wednesday, coding on Saturdays. Thank you very much.